A strange event occurred in the sky, but it vanished quickly. The following day, the young boy and his father witnessed numerous fighter planes flying in the same direction. Then the boy noticed a huge light spot in the sky. It turned out to be a comet flying towards the Earth. The hero paid little attention to it, as experts stated it was merely comet pieces that would incinerate in the atmosphere and not descend to the Earth. Strange things started happening. The hero heard a loud sound in the supermarket and realized it was his own. He took out his phone when it rang and saw that it was a presidential alert on the screen. The male protagonist was shocked and clueless. Then the phone rang, and it was Homeland Security Bureau calling. The male protagonist was even more confused. He pressed the answer button and realized it was not a joke. He quickly took his son away from the supermarket. On the road, the military armored vehicle was driving fast. The male protagonist felt uneasy. He stepped on the accelerator and rushed home. When he got home, the neighbors were watching the live broadcast of the spectacular scene of the comet falling. Just when everyone was watching it intently, the house suddenly shook. The male protagonist hurried out of the house to check a group of people. The bird flew over his roof quickly. The shock wave scared everyone. The latest news came from the TV. A painted star fragment just landed in the middle of Florida. It was the size of a football field, but its power was indescribable. The nearby cities were immediately pursued. The shock wave surpassed 20 kilometers. Panic ensued. At a loss, the male lead received another alert. The TV screen displayed the names of their family of 3 and reminded them to arrive at the Air Force Base before 9:45 p.m. With the QR code, they can board the plane and fly directly to the emergency shelter. Then the male protagonist received the QR code. He quickly packed his luggage and rushed to the Air Force Base without delay. He arrived here in the evening. The base entrance was crowded, but only those useful to the country were selected. The country hopes these people can help society rebuild their homes after the disaster. The male protagonist is a construction engineer, so his family will be chosen. He showed the QR code to the soldier, who scanned it and allowed them to go to hangar number. The male protagonist and his family arrived at the hangar to board the plane, but his wife found that her son might have been left in the car. He would go out to fetch it while there was still time. He asked his wife to wait here and not to depart. The wife waited a long time, but her husband did not return. Anxious, she sought out the soldier to explain the situation, hoping he could help her find her husband. The soldier discovered that his son had diabetes and promptly informed his superiors using a walkie-talkie. Consequently, the mother and son were transported to the headquarters. The female officer told him that people with chronic diseases could not board the plane and asked them to leave. The wife pleaded, but it was in vain. The mother and son were expelled. Just as the male lead reached the hangar, an accident occurred. A crowd broke through the outer defense line of the Air Force Base. Hundreds of thousands rushed to the airport like a tide. A fierce gunfight between the guns and the soldiers resulted in a soldier being accidentally hit while refueling. The soldier fell down and the fuel came out. The ground was filled with a dangerous atmosphere. The male protagonist witnessed this scene on the plane and immediately turned around and shouted to the people inside. The airport was instantly in chaos. When the male protagonist ran to the exit, suddenly the male protagonist's wife and children outside the base saw the explosion inside. They were scared and quickly took their son to the car, waiting for their husband. Suddenly, she discovered that her son's blood sugar was low and he urgently needed insulin. She left a note and took her son to the pharmacy in desperation. While she was getting the medicine, a group of armed thugs broke in and killed anyone they encountered. The mother and son were terrified and quickly crawled towards the exit. However, a young man blocked their way. The woman knelt, cried, and begged him to let them go. Luckily, the young man did not embarrass them. He reached out to help her up and they left quickly. The woman spotted a parked car and rushed over with her son to seek help from a couple, hoping for a ride. They agreed. However, she didn't expect that when the car was halfway, the man noticed the mother and son wearing bracelets on their hands, indicating their evil intentions. He waited before boarding the plane to the emergency shelter. He stopped the car on the side of the road, forcibly dragged the woman out, took off his bracelet, then left with his son. The woman chased him like crazy, but it was no use. The car was getting farther and farther away from him. He wanted to stop a car, but no one stopped. On the other side, the hero ran out of the base. However, the car was so tightly blocked that he could only walk out. He soon found a truck and asked the driver for a ride. The driver agreed. Meanwhile, his wife walked along the highway and cried. Luckily, shortly after, a kind person was willing to take him to the Air Force Base. Upon arrival, he quickly explained to the soldiers. The soldier agreed to let him go in and look for his son. With the help of a staff member, he finally found his son. The mother and son hugged and cried when they entered the base. The little boy told the soldier that they were not his parents. The soldier quickly used a scanner to check the bracelet and discovered that the child was not theirs. The soldier quickly asked for help, comforted the little boy, and sent him to the tent. The mother and son met and found a public telephone booth. The woman called her father while the male protagonist waited at home. Upon hearing his wife's call, he promptly drove to their location and the family was reunited in front of the telephone booth. When he returned home and saw the news, it is reported that soon a piece of the largest comet will fall to the Earth. This impact will affect the entire world. They cannot stay and must go to Greenland immediately. The male lead heard that there was still space in the shelter there, but the old man refused to accompany him. He lived here and wanted to stay here even if he died. The daughter could only say goodbye to her father with tears in her eyes. A family of 3 traveled to the airport on the highway. The sky had turned a terrible red at that moment. The time before the destruction of the Earth was running out. The highway was still jammed. Just when they were confused, a meteorite rain suddenly fell from the sky. The man quickly turned and drove the car to the woods, reaching a bridge. He swiftly took his wife and children to hide under it. They only escaped then. The family came out and continued on their way when the meteorite stopped. They arrived at the airport at night. They saw the last plane was about to take off. The hero immediately drove into the small road, rushed over the fence and chased after it. "I can do it! I can do it! I can do it!" The plane was finally forced to stop by him. The pilot scolded the hero for not bringing his family with him, but eventually agreed. The next day, the plane arrived at Glimmers Island. Seeing the scenery outside the window, everyone finally smiled. They saw the hope of life. But at this moment, the plane suddenly shook violently. A comet fragment fell from the sky and exploded instantly. The plane was affected by the shock wave. The plane lost power and both engines failed. The pilot had to cut off the power and let the plane glide to avoid the upwind, then force a landing. The massive impact instantly killed the pilot. Only 10 minutes remained before the largest debris struck the Earth. Everyone ran to the refuge base and met the troops on the way. They boarded the military vehicle and headed to the base. As soon as they arrived at the base, they heard the alarm. The largest comet fragment had passed through the atmosphere and hit the Earth. The male protagonist and his family hugged each other tightly. The largest satellite fragment finally fell on the Earth. In under a minute, most of the world turned to dust. 9 months later, the dust was still slowly vanishing. The riot door could be opened at last. The long-awaited sunlight shone on their faces. Only a piece of wasteland lay ahead.